Hey everyone, Jacob's here. Today we're going to explain the ending of Oppenheimer.
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
Please subscribe before continuing to explore the world of cinema with us. There is a desire to pull on the many strands that unravel before us while assessing a masterpiece like Oppenheimer, about the man responsible for developing the first nuclear weapons that may just be writer-director Christopher Nolan's most massive and mature work yet. The main focus of American Prometheus book, which it is based the Pulitzer Prize-winning biography, is how J. Robert Oppenheimer becomes the head of the Manhattan Project, where he works to create the weapons of mass destruction that will kill hundreds of thousands of people when they are dropped over the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945. By doing this, he solidified a disgraceful history as one of the individuals who eternally molded the world in blood and drove us to the point where we are constantly on the verge of extinction. It is in the final moments where Nolan makes this explicit, even going so far as to have a character imply that much of what preceded it was largely unimportant, making any discussion of the film itself require an in-depth read of this ending. If it wasn't already obvious, this video includes complete spoilers, so it's best to save it and return after you've seen the film. The closing scene is one that we saw early on from a different perspective after Oppenheimer succeeded in his mission of making the atomic weapon that is now recontextualized. We had earlier seen the physicist talking with Albert Einstein down by a small body of water while Lewis Strauss watches on, as portrayed by a positively frightening Cillian Murphy in one of his best performances to date. When the action first started, the two men appeared to be having a serious conversation, albeit it was only briefly heard by us. We only knew that Einstein turned away, ignoring Strauss as he did so, and that his face was now permanently marked with a grimace. The movie then goes back and forth from this point, carefully examining both how we got there and what happened next. The theme of Oppenheimer. We all know that Oppenheimer is about the death of the world by man's hand. Oppenheimer and his colleagues had to consider the prospect that their efforts to develop the weapon, which they had naively claimed would put a stop to all future wars, might really destroy everything they had come to know. The math presented that it might start a domino effect that would eventually destroy everything and anything. This terrifying prospect is something we see playing out in Oppenheimer's mind constantly as he imagines the world being consumed by fire, the sound of screams swallowing up everything around him in a frightening fashion. The fact that this doesn't occur during their test seems to provide comfort since the world keeps spinning as it did before. However, while Oppenheimer tries to run from what he has created, the reality is that it has forever and fundamentally changed life for the worse. No matter how vainly Oppenheimer attempts to reverse what he has done and argue against the continued use of atomic weapons, it is a Pandora's box that, once it has been forced open, unleashes destructive forces that he cannot put back up. The apparently serene scene by the water is dominated by sorrow when Oppenheimer talks to Einstein in the closing scene. Einstein had previously attempted to push for the initiative by drafting a letter to President Roosevelt, before also turning against it and severely regretting his early support. Both men were full of insights about the potential of the world, but because of these insights, they were now living in a world that was less fortunate. When we come back to this moment in the end, we finally hear what it was that they said to each other that resulted in Einstein being shattered into silence. When he first showed him the calculations that led to the worry that they would end the world, Oppenheimer asks him if he remembers. In his own words, he did. How could one possibly forget something like that? When Oppenheimer subsequently claims that they did just that, this becomes even more evident. The words hang in the air, and Einstein turns away, his face turning black in recognition of the unavoidable reality of what he had heard. The truth, as we have now seen, is that Strauss had speculated that the conversation had somehow been about him. To keep distance from Strauss, the reality as we have now seen it was that both his and the ego of the men involved mattered little in the grand destruction they had created. It was precisely this self-centered desire and haughtiness associated with their empty triumphs, regardless of the enormous costs they were all fully aware of, that gave rise to the fractured society we live in today. The ending of Oppenheimer. When Oppenheimer then stands alone with one final vision of the world being utterly and completely destroyed by his creation playing out fully, the unmitigated terror of what they've done is not tempered by his speaking it aloud. For the hundreds who died, and the many more who could, in an instant, His hollow acknowledgement came too late. Without further comment, this is the time when his legacy is made clear. He cannot recover from it, and there is no hope of redemption for him. All that remains is the towering shadow of death that he unleashed upon this earth. Oppenheimer is still playing near theaters in your area. If you've already watched it, it never hurts to watch it again for the second time or maybe third time. If there's any topic that you want me to discuss, please comment below. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Also turn notification on. See you in the next video.